The massacre of April 1919 wasn't an isolated incident, rather an incident that happened with a multitude of factors working in the background. To understand what transpired on April 13, 1919, one must look at the events preceding it. The Indian National Congress had assumed self-governance would be granted once World War I ended, but the imperial bureaucracy had other plans. The Rowlatt Act was passed on March 10, 1919, authorizing the government to imprison or confine without any trial any person associated with seditious activities. This led to nationwide unrest. Gandhi initiated satyagraha to protest against the Rowlatt Act. On April 7, 1919, Gandhi published an article called Satyagrahi describing ways to oppose Rowlatt Act. The British authorities discussed among themselves the actions to be taken against Gandhi and any other leaders who were participating in the satyagraha. Orders were issued to prohibit Gandhi from entering Punjab and to arrest him if he disobeyed the orders. Sir Michael O'Dwyer, the Lieutenant Governor of Punjab, suggested that Gandhi be deported to Burma, but this was opposed by his fellow officials as they felt it might instigate the public. Dr. Saifuddin Kichlew and Dr. Satyapal, the two prominent leaders who were the symbol of Hindu-Muslim unity, organized a peaceful protest against the Rowlatt Act in Amritsar. On April 9, 1919, Ram Navami was being celebrated when Michael O'Dwyer issued orders to Deputy Commissioner Mr. Irving to arrest Dr. Satyapal and Dr. Kichlew. The following extract from Amrit Bazar Patrika dated 19 November 1919 talks about the witness account of Mr. Irving in front of the Anta Commission and highlights the mindset of British authorities. He was directed by the government of Sir Michael O'Dwyer to deport Dr. Kichlew and Satyapal. He knew that such an act would lead to a popular outburst. He also knew that none of these popular leaders favored violence. He invited the two gentlemen to his house on the morning of April 10th. They unsuspectedly responded to the call, no doubt relying on his honor as an Englishman. But after they had been under his roof for half an hour as his guests, they were caught hold of and removed towards Dharmashala under police escort. Mr. Irving told this story without showing any sign of having done an act which very few Englishmen would care to do. On April 10, 1919, the infuriated protesters marched to Deputy Commissioner's residence to demand the release of their two leaders. Here, they were fired upon without any provocation. Many people were wounded and killed. The protesters retaliated with lathis and stones and attacked any European who came in their way. One of the mishaps was attacked on Miss Sherwood, superintendent of the mission school in Amritsar. As per her testimony, on April 10, 1919, she was intercepted and beaten by a mob which screamed, "Kill her, she is English," and "Victory to Gandhi, victory to Kichlew." She was attacked until she fell unconscious. The mob went away assuming she was dead. However, a counter-narrative is provided by Lokasangraha, a weekly published out of Bombay, which denies claims of severe harm, stating instead that the wounds inflicted were in fact minimal. After passing the Rowlatt Act, the Punjab government set out to suppress all opposition. On April 13, 1919, the public had gathered to celebrate Baisakhi. However, the British point of view, as seen from the documents present in the National Archives of India, indicates that it was a political gathering. In spite of General Dyer's orders prohibiting unlawful assembly, people gathered at Jallianwala Bagh where two resolutions were to be discussed. One condemning the firing on April 10 and other requesting the authorities to release their leaders. When the news reached him, Brigadier General Dyer headed to the Bagh with his troops. He entered the Bagh, deployed his troops and ordered them to open fire without giving any warning. People rushed to the exits, but Dyer directed his soldiers to fire at the exit. The firing continued to 10 to 15 minutes. 1,650 rounds were fired. The firing ceased only after ammunition had ran out. The total estimated figure of the dead, as given by General Dyer and Mr. Irving, was 291. However, other reports, including that of a committee headed by Madan Mohan Malviya, put the figure of the dead at over 500. 2 days after the massacre, martial law was clamped down on 5 districts: Lahore, Amritsar, Gujranwala, Gujarat and Jallianwala. The declaration of martial law was to empower the Viceroy to direct immediate trial by court-martial of any person involved in revolutionary activities. As the news of the massacre spread across the nation, Tagore renounced his knighthood. On October 14, 1990, the Disorders Inquiry Committee was formed to inquire about the massacre. It later came to be known as Hunter Commission. The Hunter Commission was directed to announce their verdict on the justifiability or otherwise of the steps taken by the government. All the British officials involved in the administration during the disturbances in Amritsar were interrogated, including General Dyer and Mr. Irving. The following extract shows Dyer's unapologetic attitude towards the massacre. For the question, after firing took place, did you take any measures to attend to the wounded? He answered, no, certainly not. It was not my job. Hospitals were open and they should have gone there. General Dyer's actions on the day of massacre received a prompt acknowledgement from Sir Michael O'Dwyer, who at once wired to him, your actions correct. Lieutenant Governor approves. Both Dyer and Dwyer faced violent criticism from various newspapers who gave him their own accounts of the brutal massacre. The extract from Independent Allahabad dated 21st November 1919 said, General Dwyer said, I fired and fired well. No other consideration waited with me. The evidence General Dyer presented before Hunter Commission stood as a confession of brutal act he committed. The committee indicated the massacre as one of the darkest episodes of British administration. The Hunter Commission in 1920 censured Dyer for his actions. The Commander-in-Chief directed Brigadier General Dyer to resign from his appointment as Brigadier Commander and informed him that he would receive no further employment in India as mentioned in a letter by Montagu to His Excellency. On March 13, 1940, at Caxton Hall in London, Udham Singh, an Indian freedom fighter, killed General Dyer. Gandhi negated Udham Singh's action and referred to it as an act of insanity. He also said, we have no desire for revenge. We want to change the system which produced Dyer. Thus, Jallianwala Bagh was the initial spark that led to independence of India. It was a tragedy for both sufferers and the colonial rulers. It revealed a fatal flaw in their assumptions and attitude. Eventually, it led to their departure from the land which they had hoped to rule for centuries. A trust was founded in 1920 to build a memorial at the site after a resolution was passed by Indian National Congress. In 1923, the trust purchased land for the project. A memorial designed by the American architect Benjamin Polk was built on the site and inaugurated by President of India Rajendra Prasad on 13th April 1961 in the presence of Jawaharlal Nehru and other leaders. A flame was later added to the site. The bullet marks remain on the walls and adjoining buildings to this day. The well into which many people jumped and drowned attempting to save themselves from the bullets is also a protected monument inside the park. Although Queen Elizabeth II had not made any comments on the incident during her state visits in 1961 and 1983, she spoke about the events at a state banquet in India on 13th October 1997. It is no secret that there have been some difficult episodes in our past. Jallianwala Bagh, which I shall visit tomorrow, is a distressing example. But the history cannot be rewritten. However much we might sometimes wish otherwise, it has its moments of sadness as well as gladness. We must learn from the sadness and build on the gladness. On 14th October 1997, Queen Elizabeth II visited Jallianwala Bagh and paid her respects with a 30-second moment of silence. During the visit, she wore a dress of the color described as pink apricot or saffron, which was of a religious significance to the Sikhs. She removed her shoes while visiting the monument and laid wreath at the monument. While some Indians welcomed the expression of regret and sadness in the Queen's statement, others criticized it for being less than an apology. The then Prime Minister of India, Inder Kumar Gujral, defended the Queen, saying that the Queen herself had not even been born at the time of the events and should not be required to apologize. During the same visit, minutes after Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip stood in silence at the Flame of Liberty, the Prince and his guide Paratha Mukherjee reached plaque describing the events of 1919 massacre. Among the many things found on the plaque was assertion that 2,000 people were killed in the massacre. The precise text is, this place is saturated with the blood of about 2,000 Hindus, Sikhs, Muslims who were martyred in the non-violent struggle. It goes on to describe the events of the day. That's a bit exaggerated, Prince Philip told Mukherjee. It must include the wounded. Mukherjee asked Philip how he had come to this conclusion. I was told about the killings by General Dyer's son. Mukherjee recalls the Duke of Edinburgh as saying, I would meet him while I was in Navy. These statements by Prince Philip drew widespread condemnation in India.